Okay, so let's start with what is tone mapping. So tone mapping is basically adding filters to your HDR and improving the look. So for example, let's make the HDR visible here. And let's go ahead and add or change the tone mapping. Right now, our tone mapping setting is set to AGX. And this is what happens if we turn off. So as you can tell, the background or the HDR is getting like less saturated and there's like a filter. So this is basically the logic of tone mapping. So change or filter HDRs will allow you to have more softer or different looking models. So for example, if you go back to our font look and let's make this blurry. And if we go ahead and turn off the tone mapping, this is how it looks. So this is the raw look of this model. But if you go with the tone mapping, as you can tell, it's much softer and better looking. So in PeachWeb, we have multiple options for tone mapping. So the first off is the linear. Linear will basically add less amount of filters to your HDR, so it doesn't change the look that much. And also you can change the exposure and also the mode in the settings section. So let's go ahead and change the exposure here. Basically, exposure is the exposure of your HDR, just like editing a photo. So if we make this 0, your scene will be pitch black. And you can play around with this depending on your scene. So for the second option, we have AGX. So AGX makes the scene or the HDR softer, which allows you to have softer lighting and details in your model. So let me go ahead and turn off and turn on so you can see the difference. In the original one, you can see there's like harsh light here, and also you can see the reflections of the light. But with the AGX, it gets less saturated, so it looks better. But these options really depends on your scene. Next off, we have ASUS Filmic. So this makes the scene much more contrasted and also makes the details look much more clear. And like I said, you can change the exposure settings depending on your scene. And also let me go ahead and reduce the blurriness so you can see the background effects much better. So let me turn off the tone mapping and let me rotate the camera. So this is our original HDR and this is with the ASUS. So as you can tell, there's much more contrast and depth in the HDR. Next off, we have Reinhardt. So Reinhardt is much more advanced option because you can change the settings here. For example, the white point, middle gray, and luminance. Like I said a couple of times, these options really depends on your scene. And the next off, we have Reinhardt Adaptive. Reinhardt Adaptive is basically optimized or improved version of Reinhardt. And you can change the settings here, resolution, the adaptation rate, and the luminance, basically. Then next off, we have optimized Cineon. So the optimized Cineon is just like AGX, makes it less saturated, but unlike AGX, the Cineon keeps the details. Then next off, we have Uncharted. So this option will basically change the exposure of your scene while keeping most of the details same. And last off, we have the neutral. Neutral adds saturation to your scene and makes it look more vibrant. You can find the details of these modes in 3JS documents, but I'm just showing you the overview of these settings. So here we have a Jordan website that we recently made. And let's go ahead and turn off the tone mapping. And let me get off the camera view. And there we go. Now let's go ahead and turn on and check for the other options in tone mapping. So currently there's no tone mapping here, but if you turn it on, here's the optimized singing option. And let's go ahead and quickly check the other options. So let's start with the linear. So for the comparison, here's the original file and the linear. So there's not a lot of effect on linear. Next up, we have the AGX. And just like I showed you, AGX makes it softer. So you might lose some details. Like I said, it depends on your scene. So for this scene, AGX is not the best option. So let's go with the ASUS Filmic. Now, it's more saturated and the contrast is a bit high. For the comparison, here's the original scene and here's the ASUS. As you can tell by the rocks here, we really lost some details of the rocks. So ASUS is not the best option for this one neither. Next up, we have Reinhardt Adaptive. And just like normal Reinhardt, this made us lose some details as well. So next up, we have Optimized Cineon. And I guess this is the best one that works. So for the comparison, let me turn it off. We didn't really lose that much detail. And also we gained some contrast and also balanced colors here. So for the comparison, here's two different looks. But let's keep checking. For the Uncharted, like I said, that's basically changed the exposure of your HDR, which makes it quite dark. So for the next one, neutral. And let's go ahead and turn it off. So neutral added some contrast, but we still lost some details. So here's the sole of the shoe, and let's choose the optimized Cineon, which worked the best. And also you can see that the reflections are more visible in optimized Cineon. And let's compare this with the AGX. We still have the details in this sole, but it doesn't work for the top of the shoe, unfortunately. So we will go with the optimized Cineon for this option. For the wrap-up, you can check 3js.org for the tone mapping, and in the GitHub, you can find the details of these mods, what it does to your HDR, etc. So I guess that's it. And this is how tone mapping works in PeachWeb.